Yes, guys, welcome back to my channel. In today's podcast, I'm grading each Premier League team on how they have done so far this season. It's halfway through the season and it's just past Christmas, so let's see how each team has done so far this year. So without further ado, let's get into the podcast. So I'm going to go through each club in alphabetical order. So the first club I'm going to talk about is AFC Bournemouth. I've given Bournemouth a B. They sit ninth in the league, and Iraola has done a really good job this season to get Bournemouth to where they are. They obviously have the smallest stadium in the Premier League, but their supporters have been pleased with their performances this season as they sit in mid-table. Kepa has been a really good signing for them in goal this year after joining on loan from Chelsea after they got rid of Neto, who went to Arsenal as their backup keeper. Iraola deserves a huge amount of credit as he's a really good progressive manager and he has a really exciting style of play which has got Bournemouth to ninth this season. They've beaten Man City, they've beaten Spurs, they've beaten Arsenal and they've beaten Man United. That's four massive teams that Bournemouth had beaten this season to get them up to where they are now. The signing of Evanilson from Porto could have been a flop as he was really expensive and their star striker, as he has never played in the Premier League and out of Portugal before, but he's been a really good signing for them. He's a really good hold-up player, as well as Enes Ünal as well. They've got two really good options up top. But in my opinion, I do think Semenyo has been their standout player. The Ghanaian winger has done really well this year in stepping up into being Bournemouth's main man. Semenyo has been a really good standout player this season on the wing, whether it be in the right wing or the left wing. There was that phase in the season where he was unstoppable for players to defend against. Big shout-outs to Milos Kerkesh and Zabani at the back. Their defence has been solid even though they lost Marcos Senesi to injury. That's why I'm giving Bournemouth an overall B for their performances in the first half of the season. The next team is Arsenal. I've also given Arsenal a B. They sit third in the league at this stage of the season as I'm recording. They should really be challenging for the league this season after two near misses against Man City in the previous two seasons. But in my opinion, I do think Arteta should leave if he does not win a trophy, or at least challenge really hard till the end of the season for the Premier League. Although Arne Slot has come into Liverpool and he's done really well, picking up from where Jurgen Klopp left off. There's been a little bit of turmoil for Arsenal this year as Edu has now left, and I do think the recruitment has not been good enough for Arsenal. They've got rid of players like Emil Smith-Rowe. Although he wasn't getting minutes, he was a creative kind of player on the left wing, when Martinelli's not been performing, and again, Sterling has not been a great signing either. They've sold creative players, and they brought in big brutes in midfield and at left back. Left back, they brought in Calafiori at the start of the season, Mikel Merino, who was instantly injured. The only creator in the middle is realistically Martin Ødegaard, and when he's injured, they look a completely different team. Because without Ødegaard, it looks unlikely that they'll create much for Kai Havertz or whoever plays up top for them. They should be closer to the top of the table at this stage of the season, but with Liverpool a few points clear at the top, time will tell whether Arsenal can win the league this year. That's why I'm giving them a B. Aston Villa, A. They sit fifth in the league and they're playing Champions League as well, and their squad is not the biggest. Morgan Rogers has come in this season and started really well, and Unai Emery is also a really good manager. He really makes his side keep the ball well in certain situations at the back, especially now they've got Pau Torres, Diego Carlos, Ezri Konsa is also really good too. They sit in a good position in the Champions League, but going back to the Premier League, they had a shaky start to the season where at one point they were 10 points worse off than last year, but now they sit fifth in the league and can really challenge for that Champions League spot again. Their recruitment has been very good, obviously bringing Martinez a few years ago, and now he's the best goalkeeper in the world. He's won that award for 2 years in a row now. But Unai Emery does have a small problem up top. Where does he start Ollie Watkins or does he start John Duran? Because one of them will not be happy, obviously, sitting on the bench. And the system Unai Emery plays, he does not play two up top. It will be interesting to see who he goes with towards the end of the season and going into next summer as well. Brentford, I'm going to give an A-. They sit in 12th place. Although they do sit in 12th, that does not look very good. With the resources Thomas Frank has, he's done really well with that Brentford side, especially losing Ivan Toney at the end of last season. They have really good home form, but their away form is what is letting them down. Even if they got a few more points or a few wins on the board away from home, they'd be happily sitting in 8th or 7th place. Because they've only had 1 point away from home all season, they're relying on their home form. They do have an exciting team with Yohan Wissa, Mbeumo, Keane Lewis-Potter and Kevin Schade up top for them. But in midfield, I do like Janelt and Norgard, who control the midfield for them, and especially Damsgaard has been a standout for them this year as well. They've performed really, really well with the resources that are available to them, as they can't go spending 60-70 million on players. So that's why I'm giving Brentford an A-. Brighton, I'm going to give a B. They sit in 9th. They could be higher, but they're really, really inconsistent. One week they could blow a team away, the next week they could be really sloppy and lose very, very easily. Having said this, again with the resources that Brighton have, they can't go spending 60, 70 million on players. They have a ready-made player in backup just in case someone leaves. Like when Caicedo left, they have Baleba. This is Hursla's first season and he's only 31 years of age. So he has done really well in the Premier League. He was manager of FC St. Pauli last year and he's got a very similar style of how he set them up compared to how he's setting Brighton up as well. I expected Mitoma to produce more this season as well as Evan Ferguson, but Danny Welbeck has really stepped up this year and scoring really, really important goals for them. Signings have been good, but some have been poor. Like Matt O'Reilly was unlucky to be injured on his debut, but scored on his return. Kadioglu has also been disappointing, where Estupinian and Lamptey have been starting over him at fullback. But overall, Brighton are having a good season, and that is why I've given them a B. Chelsea is the next team, and I've given them an A+. They lie second in the league at the time of recording. They were not expected to be in a title race, even to get top 4 at the start of the year. We didn't know if Palmer would have the same impact he had on last year with Chelsea, but he's continued his really good form and been a really important player for them. Enzo Maresca has come in and turned Nicholas Jackson into a really good striker. I do think Nicholas Jackson is now better than Darwin Núñez, as they were both really erratic last year, but Jackson's really worked on his finishing to become a really elite striker. Maresca deserves a huge amount of credit for the amount of players he's had to manage, and his style of play is really good on the eye as well. Chelsea lie in second, and they are definitely in a title race. So it will be interesting to see how they go for the end of the season. Crystal Palace, I've given a D. They lie in 15th place. They lost Michael Olise last year to Bayern Munich, as well as Joachim Andersen to Fulham, which I thought was a little bit of a weird one, although Andersen has played for Fulham before. Those players' replacements have been Ismaila Sarr, who's not really produced, and Eddie Nketiah, who's also been very poor this year. Mateta has continued-ish of the form that he showed at the end of last year, but overall, it's been quite poor. Maxence Lacroix has come in and not really fitted in that well. I expected the back three of Palace to do a lot better than they have. Obviously, Palace have lost the new manager bounce that Oliver Glasner had at the end of last season, but recent results have picked up and they are looking up the table rather than behind them for relegation. Eze has also not stepped up. He is now the main man and he sometimes does go quiet in games. I do think Michael Olise, obviously having moved to Bayern, has that killer instinct that Eberechi Eze does not. That is why Olise got that big move and Eze did not. So Crystal Palace, I've ranked a D. Everton, C. They're in 16th place. I think Sean Dyche is doing the best he can with what resources he has. They can't really score up top. They don't have that clinical edge and that clinical finisher up top. Beto, Chamiti, Calvert-Lewin aren't really clinical finishers. They're just big men to hold the ball up. They have kept many clean sheets, although, this season, with Pickford in goal, Michael Keane, James Tarkowski. But having said that, they do lie in 16th. A few bad results can put them into the relegation battle, and they cannot go down with that new stadium incoming for next season. Fulham, B+. They're 10th in the league with Marco Silva at the helm. They're a really exciting team. Iwobi has really shone this season as well. Marco Silva's got Raul Jimenez performing at a really high level again, so they do have good options up top. As I said before, Iwobi's done really well this year, but when he came from Everton, there were a few question marks around his name. As I said earlier regarding Crystal Palace, Joachim Andersen has really improved that defence, as well as Emil Smith-Rowe on that left wing. He has not got that many goal contributions this season so far, but if he continues the form he is in, I'm sure he'll get many more and contribute really highly to Fulham's success. It seems online, on TikTok and Instagram, they've got really good team morale as well, with Bassi, Iwobi, Adama Traore, who's always a dangerous player on his day, but again, he needs to work on his finishing. But Fulham are doing really well this year and lie right in the middle of the Premier League in 10th. Ipswich, I'll give a C. They lie in 18th place, but I'm sure most Ipswich fans expected them to be in a relegation battle this year. They do have some exciting players in Omari Hutchinson, Sammy Schmodics, and Liam Delap as well. They've got Kieran McKenna, who's a very good coach. It will be interesting to see if he can keep them up this year and where they go from there. Because if they go down, I'm sure those players I listed above will leave and they have to rebuild again. But I do feel Ipswich are a kind of yo-yo team. If they go down, they may come back up again, just like how Norwich were in the mid-2010s. Leicester City, I'm going to give a D. They sacked Steve Cooper, brought in Ruud van Nistelrooy, and they now sit in 17th. Van Nistelrooy had a good start to his tenure as manager of Leicester, but that new manager bounce has kind of died down a bit now. They're still led by Jamie Vardy. Patson Daka has not really lived up to the hype when he came from RB Salzburg. But again, I'm sure Leicester fans expected them to be around the relegation zone, as they sold so many of their good players when they went down. Their midfield is very average with Harry Winks, Oliver Skipp, Wilfred Ndidi. There's a lot of defensive players, as well as Sumare. The defence, I think, is quite poor with Wout Fass. Danny Ward has made a couple of mistakes as well. Hermansen's been a good standout player for them. But overall, they deserve a D because they haven't really performed that well. sacked their manager, and they're still near the bottom of the table. Liverpool, A+. Arne Slot is coming for Jurgen Klopp. Arne Slot has now got an 84% win percentage in all competitions so far. They sit top of the Premier League. They sit top of the Champions League group stage. Gravenberch, Szoboszlai and Alexis McAllister have been a really solid midfield for them so far this year. They have no real defensive midfielder, but all of them combined create a very solid midfield. Obviously Van Dijk, Gomez, Konate, Trent, Robertson maybe on the downhill a little bit. But one thing I will say is that Salah, Van Dijk and Trent are out of contract in the summer, as well as Alisson. But they've got Mamardashvili coming in, so does that mean Alisson is going to leave and Mamardashvili will be the new number one? Will Trent sign a new deal or go to Real Madrid? Van Dijk is obviously very important, and so is Salah as well. It'll be interesting to see what happens as they are free to talk to another club come January. Salah is still performing at a very high level, but others like Luis Diaz has started to do that. But other players in the attack like Jota, Nunez as well need to start performing at that high level if they want to maintain their position at the top of the table. Manchester City, E. They're fifth in the league as it stands at the moment as I'm filming this. They've lost so many games in a row now. They had a poor window. They got rid of players like Mahrez. They got rid of Alvarez. They got rid of players before like Sane and Sterling. And they've brought in players like Savinho, Grealish. Doku and Savinho are still young, learning their trade. Grealish hasn't scored in over a year. Foden scored his first goal of the season the other day and not been performing. The missing link cannot only be Rodri. I'm sure this will be happening. It won't be as bad of a situation if Rodri was there, but I don't think one player like him can change everything, as they've been really sloppy at the back. They've been getting old together. They've not recruited well. Kyle Walker seems to be getting on as well. Bernardo Silva, Gundogan, I don't think should have come back. De Bruyne is looking leggy, not producing the form like he used to as well. All of those players I listed just now, aging together, they haven't got the legs in midfield and they play very, very slow. But I don't know what is going on with Pep. Will he leave? Will he stay? It will be interesting to see how City can get on for the rest of the season. Moving on to Man United, the club I support, I've given them an E. They sit in 13th halfway through the season, which is so poor. Ineos have mucked up a couple of times, giving Ten Hag a lot of money, getting Dan Ashworth, but then getting rid of him as well. At the end of the season, when we won the FA Cup against City, that is a good time to get rid of Ten Hag, as then Ruben Amorim could have come in before that, or Thomas Tuchel could have come in before that and made his stamp in pre-season. But now Ruben Amorim's got the January transfer window, and it's very difficult to get players in January, see what he can do, see what players he can get rid of. The players are simply just not good enough. Xerxes came in, not a prolific goal scorer, I think scored 9 in 50 games for Bologna. And we're relying on players such as Højlund and Xerxes to get the goals for us. Bruno's not been performing. The only player that has been, in my opinion, this year is Ahmad. Even Onana letting sloppy goals in. Maguire's done okay, but some of the players are just not good enough, getting on a bit as well, like Harry Maguire, Victor Lindelof. Shaw keeps getting injured. Rashford wants to leave. Garnacho's attitude is poor. So it's not looking good for Man United, but hopefully Ruben Amorim can take Man United higher up the table and have a good window in the next couple. Newcastle, C+. They lie in 6th place, which is actually quite high for them. It's been better recently. Their form at the start of the season was very, very poor. The way they're playing was very poor as well. They had no intensity in their press. When teams beat their press, it was very easy to break them down and get to their defence. That could lie on the problem with Fabian Schär's getting old, Kieran Trippier's getting old, but they've now put in Livramento and Lewis Hall at their fullback positions, but they still miss Sven Botman. And that Eddie Howe's team selection has not been the best. He's still selecting Sean Longstaff over Tonali at some point. The question is, why is he doing that? Because Tonali is obviously signed for 60 million. And seeing that talent there in Tonali is obviously so much more than Sean Longstaff. Why is he starting a worse player than Tonali? They do need players like a right winger. They cannot have Almiron or Murphy there anymore. They've got 2 left wingers in Barnes and Gordon, who cannot start on the right wing. So they need someone to replace Almiron. They need another centre-back as well. Cher is getting old, obviously. Botman is very injury-prone. Dan Burn is very, very slow. They've also been very inconsistent this year, but it's picked up recently, which is why I've given them a C+, as they lie in 6th place. Nottingham Forest, A+. They lie in 3rd place. Nuno Espirito Santo has done a great job. I was unsure whether he'll get a good job after he left Spurs and got sacked. But the front 3 behind the striker in Hudson-Odoi, Elanga and Morgan Gibbs-White, as well as Chris Wood, who plays up top, he suits really well to the system, as he holds the ball up for the faster players to get in behind. It'll be interesting to see if they can maintain that for the rest of the season, or if they can bring anyone in January. Milenkovic has been a rock-solid defender for them at the back. He scored against Man United, and he's just overall been a very, very good defender and a very calming presence at the back for Forest, as well as Ola Aina as well. Dominguez, they've been very consistent, and they haven't had a massive drop-off yet. But it'll be interesting to see how teams cope with them into the second half of the season. Southampton, E. I'm sure all Southampton fans would expect it to be in a relegation battle, but to be so far away and to play such expansive football at the bottom of the table, Russell Martin deservedly got sacked. They need to be more pragmatic in the way they defend, be less open, be less expansive on the ball. They lose the ball in their box way too often in games, which is obviously not ideal. And most of the players they have are championship players. Joe Aribo, Adam Armstrong's not good enough. Alex McCarthy's not good enough. Ramsdale, I feel sorry for. I'm sure he'll get a move again when Southampton get relegated. But overall, they've been so poor, so far off it this season. They're the one team in the league that does definitely deserve to get relegated. Spurs, I'm going to give a D. They sit in 9th place. They are very inconsistent. When Spurs are good, they are absolutely phenomenal. When Spurs are bad, they are very, very poor. Their squad isn't very big. With Romero and Van der Ven out, they have to play Dragusin and Archie Gray at the back, which proves their recruitment in the summer wasn't as good as it should have been. Quite often they're too open, but one good thing about Spurs this year is Kulusevski has really stepped up to be one of the main men for Spurs this season. Son is also getting on, but Maddison's also stepped up. But they just need more depth. They just need to be less open under Ange. Ange said he wins a trophy in his second year. I don't think that will happen. I also don't think their midfield is good enough with Bissouma and Pape Sarr in there. I think Ange needs better players on the ball to provide a good two midfielders in his system. West Ham, I'm going to give a D. They're 14th in the league. Under Julian Lopetegui, they're so poor. I do think Lopetegui is an overrated manager. He hasn't got the best out of the players. One of the only players performing for them at the moment is Kudus and Bowen. And obviously, they've got Paqueta, they've got Fulkrug, who's not worked out, Rodriguez, who hasn't worked out. Wan-Bissaka's been a good signing, Kilman's been a good signing. But overall, West Ham should not be where they are. The players they have, if they have a better manager, I'm sure they'll be challenging for top 8, top 7. They have a good squad, but they should not be where they are, and I think they should sack their manager and get a new one. Finally, that moves on to Wolves. I'm going to give them an E. The players they have, especially with Mateus Cunha, Sarabia as well, they shouldn't be where they are in 18th place. They sacked Gary O'Neill. They got a new manager from Al-Shabaab, but he's got no previous experience of a relegation battle in the Premier League, which will be interesting to see as whether or not he can handle it. They stripped Lemina of captaincy and got Nelson Semedo to be their new captain, which was under Gary O'Neill. So again, it will be interesting to see what the new manager will do. Wolves, I believe, have the quality to get out of a relegation battle, but let's see what the new manager is about and what kind of ideas he has to share on the pitch. So that was all 20 Premier League teams, me grading them from A to E on how they have done so far at the halfway stage of this season. If you did enjoy that video, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe. One thing before I go is Merry Christmas and Happy New Year. And don't forget, I'll see you later for more.